Welcome in, folks, to the latest edition of Player Profiler today, airing on this fine Wednesday, July the 10th. I'm your host, Mike Lindberg, Grindberg, Senior Analyst at the Player Profiler News Desk. It's my pleasure to guide you through today's top stories and insights right here every Wednesday. So without further ado, let's dive straight into action with our headline stories. Let's start this show off with the AFC North breakdown. We're going to start this show off with going over the Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens have emerged as a dominant force in the AFC, especially in 2023, securing the conference top seed and with a remarkable point differential of 203 in the best in the league. Their defense is balanced approach, and they have a balanced approach on offense, finishing fourth in scoring offense, first in scoring defense, highlighted by their well-rounded roster. However, this offseason saw significant changes, both in personnel and in coaching, and it's been navigated through departures and arrivals, maintain their competitive edge. We shall see. Under head coach John Harbaugh, his tenure has spanned over 16 seasons with a 160-99 record. The Ravens welcomed offensive coordinator Todd Monken, and that was a good situation. They orchestrated a pass-happy approach with 56% of pass plays. Now they bring in a key acquisition in Derrick Henry to that backfield, Deontay Hardy at wide receiver, while notable departures included Odell Beckham Jr., Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins. These changes set the stage for a transition period, especially on the offensive line, where three new starters are set to replace departed veterans. Despite these adjustments, the Ravens' foundation remains anchored by their dual threat quarterback, Lamar Jackson, and let's get into him and his fantasy value headed into 2024 season. Lamar Jackson, he continues to cement himself as an elite status, top-tier quarterback for the Ravens. Last year, he had a league-best 13-4 record, but also secured his second NFL Most Valuable Player award. Despite his success, Jackson's fantasy output as the QB4 in 2023 doesn't fully reflect his dominance, highlighted by career highs in passing yards, 3,678, and efficiency under Todd Monken. That guidance is great. Now they bring in a beast, a formidable rushing attack, bolstered by the addition of Derrick Henry. Jackson remains a dual threat force. Don't get me wrong on this. His ability to navigate a clean pocket resulted in a top-tier ranking and passing rating. Jackson's unparalleled, his rushing prowess, it continues to define his fantasy appeal. He leads all quarterbacks in rushing yards. The last season, he remains and maintains an unprecedented career average. He shows no signs of slowing down despite the limited goal line opportunities that present themselves. Jackson's consistency and high floor make him a compelling QB1 option headed into drafts, offering a unique blend of passing efficiency and ground dominance that only a few can match. Certain new quarterbacks entering the league have that buzz going on right now, but we can't forget the guy who has proven to do it year after year. Lamar Jackson is my quarterback 2 headed into 2024. So that's a huge thing here. Let's break down this running back room now, headed by 2024 fantasy darling Derrick Henry. Let's see if he can become a darling with maybe a 15-plus touchdown season. You never know in this high-octane Ravens offense. I'm expecting a lot of touchdowns for Derrick Henry in 2024, leaving behind his reign as a Titan in Tennessee at 30 years old. Henry's age becomes that focal point. Is he on the decline? Is he at that age cliff people keep talking about? The sheer volume alone and the goal line prowess make him a coveted asset, especially in non-PPR and half PPR leagues where rushing dominance shines the brightest. In 2023, despite playing only 42% of the Ravens' offensive snaps, Henry found the end zone 13 times and maintained an impressive carry average. While concerns about Henry's age and declining numbers persist, his consistency in yards after contact and goal line effectiveness remains an elite option. Partnered with the dynamic duo of Lamar Jackson and himself, there's so much upside that I'm willing to invest in his ability to deliver a game-changing performance week in and week out. It's going to be consistent, and I love what I'm seeing here. It's going to be a good year, I'm thinking. There's still another year left in the tank, I'm assuming, here for Derrick Henry. He faces that inevitable age cliff. We talk about it all the time. But his role in that run-heavy scheme, in the unmatched goal line proficiency, it just makes him a very compelling option headed into this season. Henry has the potential to be a top 5 running back headed into 2024, and I can see it glowing. Keaton Mitchell coming off that injury. He still hasn't practiced yet. It doesn't look like he's going to start the season right away. So Rasheen Ali has gained a lot of steam here. Keep your eye on that training camp for those guys. Now we're going to talk about the wide receiver room there in Baltimore, and we got to talk about Zay Flowers, who emerged as a young receiver for the Ravens last year. He's going to build off that solid rookie campaign where he quickly became the favorite target of Lamar Jackson. Flowers' role as the primary target in Ravens offense is underscored by a significant target share of 24% last season. While Baltimore's historic tendency is to feature tight ends in the passing game poses a challenge for Flowers' overall outlook, but the talent and opportunity make him a very, very, very intriguing guy for me. I think he's got, you should target him as a high-end wide receiver too, with substantial upside, banking on his growth. I love year 2 wide receivers. In terms of fantasy, Flowers emerges as the top target among the Ravens receivers due to his projected volume, his triple-digit targets, and potential for significant fantasy production at the wide receiver 3 price point. While Bateman may intrigue as a late-round flyer given his current draft status, wideouts beyond Flowers I'm not banking on. You got to monitor like Nelson Aguilar in this offense occasionally as a streaming option, but let's go. Zay Flowers season. Here we go. Tight ends. This is an intriguing tight end group. We know that Isaiah Likely offers the biggest handcuff in fantasy football as the tight end 1 coming in. If he can do that, then you know what's going to happen here, folks. Headed into 2024, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are key figures for the Ravens passing game, albeit with differing trajectories. Andrews, despite a shortened 2023 season due to injury, continues to be the stalwart at the tight end position. He's maintained elite per game fantasy numbers. I don't see that changing too much. I do see an opportunity for Isaiah Likely. Because he emerged late in 2023, he showed potential as a dynamic receiving threat. Over the last 5 weeks, Likely delivered impressive tight end 3, tight end 5, tight end 9 finishes. If Andrews were to get sidelined, Likely would be stepping into that tight end 1 role, but he still has some immediate impact heading into 2024. Nevertheless, his emergence adds depth to that passing room. I love this situation for the Baltimore Ravens. So, let's keep it going. So if you are enjoying this content daily on the Player Profiler Today news channel here on YouTube and on Twitter, please give us a like and a subscribe. Goes a long way in keeping us going here on the channel. So please do that continuously. Let's head into the Cincinnati Bengals, and they showed resilience in the competitive AFC North, finishing 9-8. And despite challenges like Joe Burrow's injuries throughout the season, he battled through that calf injury. At the end of the year, he suffered that wrist injury that is still seeming to loom So let's get into Joe Burrow's situation. It's a tough one. His injury, his journey, everything, it spells resilience from, how he became a star, got overlooked at Ohio State and then got transferred to LSU. Then he was drafted overall first by the Bengals. And then he tested himself in his first couple of years, making that Super Bowl appearance. He's shown resilience. And even after a wrist injury in 2022, he finished as a QB4 for fantasy points per game, thanks to his strong connection with Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. Looking forward, his health remains a key concern for fantasy managers. In 2023, he battled through that calf injury, and now that wrist injury is looming through. I'm a little concerned about Joe Burrow, but if he's on the field, set it and forget it. He's a QB1 with significant upside if he's in the lineup. So if you're a fantasy manager drafting right now, it's kind of a cautious play, but you got to think that Joe Burrow is going to be playing in 2024. And if he's on the field, expect, a 4,500 yard passing year, 34 touchdowns type season. So looking good for Joe Burrow. Interesting backfield there. We've been through it here on Player Profiler Day a lot, but let's get back into it. Zach Moss, Chase Brown, they're both pivotal figures in the Cincinnati Bengal backfield following significant offseason changes. Moss was acquired on a 2-year deal from the Colts. He's demonstrated the capacity and the capability to be a lead back with his tenure in Indianapolis when he filled in for Jonathan Taylor pretty admirably. He showcased impressive efficiency, notable performances, including a 165-yard, 2-touchdown game against the Lions. His ability to excel in the Bengals shotgun offense, it gives them, a lot of optimism here. And on the other hand, we got Chase Brown, drafted in the 5th round, 2023. He represents an intriguing yet less established option, despite a limited role in his rookie season and a subsequent hamstring injury. Brown has showcased his explosiveness and receiving prowess down the stretch. He's posted impressive efficiency and metrics among young running backs, and he should be one to be targeted in the later rounds with such an ambiguous situation there in Cincinnati after the departure of Joe Mixon and all his vacated touches. It's going to lead to something for both these guys, I think, and I think they're both particularly emphasizing in PPR late round flyers, both these guys. That backfield has got a lot of touchdowns and yards up for grabs. So interesting situation. Wide receiver room, I love what they've done. They've got the perennial star, Ja'Marr Chase. He's going to lead the charge. T. Higgins coming back. Another year, sign the franchise tag. He should be playing for the Bengals throughout the whole season unless the wheels fall off near the end and they decide to use him as trade bait. And then the interesting one, who's getting a lot of buzz right now, and one that I've had pegged as a late round sleeper even before, even after the T. Higgins signing his tag. I still think Jermaine Burton's going to carve out a big role in a team that runs a ton of wide receiver 3 sets and the vacated targets by Tyler Boyd. I think that Jermaine Burton is going to come in and become a star in this league, potentially as early as his first year. So look out for Jermaine Burton, folks. He's gaining a lot of steam. He can play that slot position, and I think that he's going to fit in well in that Bengals offense with all the vacated targets. T. Higgins, situational, he does put up good wide receiver 2 numbers. So if you can get him out of value in a wide receiver role, which I see him falling in some of these drafts, I like that value there, but I'm not picking him as a wide receiver 2. And now, interesting situation here as a tight end group, because they'd have a new tight end in the house. Irv Smith Jr. is gone. Didn't quite work out. Now we got Mike Gesicki coming into the fold. He's the league's best giddy upper and go. Tentatively expects to be the primary receiving option for the group, although this offense has spent the better part of the recent years ignoring that tight end position. I'm not expecting much out of Gesicki. If he can get into the red zone, he could be a guy that they lean on a little bit there. But as far as targets and carving out a role, I'm not so sure that's going to happen. So yeah, that's the first two teams here that we've covered in the AFC North. Good breakdown. It's time to hear from the one and only Podfather about the FFPC spring promo.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
All right. Thanks to the Podfather for that message from FFPC. Now let's dive deep here into the Cleveland Browns. And last season was truly one of the best performances by the Browns since the team returned back to Cleveland. They couldn't quite register their second playoff victory during that span, but their 30-plus point differential in the regular season marked the first time they finished in the green since 2007. While the team can't exactly rely on Joe Flacco putting Superman cape on in December, expectations are high than ever for this single most expensive roster. So let's go here, folks, and see what is happening in the Cleveland Browns dressing room. And we know about Deshaun Watson. We know about his situation. You know, he played very few games last year in the middle of that season and, finished it off with, ending it injured. So not great. When he was there, he wasn't putting up great numbers. His fantasy points per season last year finished him as the quarterback 24 in points per game. And that is not great when you think about the contract he was given. And we'll have to see what happens there moving forward. Some people are optimistic that he can come back and regain some of his old flair. They brought in weapons like Jerry Jeudy to complement him there. They're going to be more of a run-centric team depending on how the Nick Chubb injury plays out. But Deshaun Watson can very well come back. If he can, sustain a 20 points per game average, that is good for, those plug-and-play super flex leagues. I'm thinking he can still be relevant in the NFL moving forward, but it's going to all rely on what's going to happen in that running back room, because that's going to take a lot of pressure off of the situation. Nick Chubb coming off that, historic injury that people, had their hearts felt last year because, that crushed a lot of people's fantasy teams so early in the season. A lot of people were high on Nick Chubb last year, and, we're hoping to see a bounce back year for him, come back healthy, and at least, what he was, a little bit of what he was in the past, because he was one of the best runners in the league. I think they're going to ease him in if he does even have the opportunity to start the year. So in comes Jerome Ford, who is an RB 42 ADP, and I like that situation. I think Jerome Ford, what he's shown last year, can be a factor. And whether or not Nick Chubb is fully healthy or not, I still think Jerome Ford has shown enough to carve himself out a decent role in 2024, Chubb or not. So keep your eye on Jerome Ford, folks, moving forward. Devonta Foreman, a very similar style, hard knocks running back. He's going to play a very similar role as a backup, depth piece. I can't see him getting into the action right away, but who I do have a lot of shares of headed into 2024, and that's Amari Cooper. His ADP right now is wide receiver in the wide receiver 2 range, and I think he can definitely return value here, especially if Deshaun Watson can play the whole year. When he was on pace last year with either Joe Flacco or Deshaun Watson in the lineup, Amari Cooper was putting up top 12 wide receiver numbers, and I think he can continue to do that even at the age of 30 years old. So look at that value here. Amari Cooper is starting to creep up here in boards, but I still love that value. I'm not expecting much from Jerry Jeudy. I don't think he's destined for a breakout here at all. I do like that run game, and I'm assuming that David Njoku is going to start playing another big part, just like he finished last year, and he's working hard to get there. Now, another team that we want to, has got a lot of changes in this offseason, especially in the quarterback room, and we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. In his illustrious tenure as the head coach, Mike Tomlin has steered the Steelers to a consistent success, never recording a season losing and making playoffs in most years. Despite a challenging AFC North, the Steelers managed a 10-7 record last season, highlighting their resilience despite how, mediocre or subpar their quarterback play was. Big changes in their lineup this year. We see significant ones. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields coming in. Wilson brings that experience and a strong arm, and Fields offers that dual threat capability, posing a competition in that starting role. I don't think so to start the year, but we could see it changing if things were to go haywire in the earlier parts of 2024 for the Steelers, who are playing in a really tough division like we always know. Burning question, who's going to start? Russell Wilson's going to start the season. It's been said that, and unless an injury happens, he will, get his chance to be there. So what's his outlook? As he heads into this season, he is likely the starter, with offensive coordinator Arthur Smith favoring him as the quarterback in this competition. There comes after Wilson signed that 1-year deal, the impact in fantasy. He joins. This is a big deal for their passing game, especially guys like George Pickens, and whether or not you think that maybe a guy like Calvin Austin or, Roman Wilson, depending on who gets that slot role, those are going to be some very important targets that are going to get gobbled up, that were vacated last year by Deontay Johnson now. So we'll have to see that. So I like what is going to happen here. I think it gives a big bump up to George Pickens. I have him as a top 15 wide receiver. I have him on the fringe of a top 12 finish in 2024. I really like a good Pat Freiermuth situation, especially at his ADP. He's a guy that's going to give good value. He's a proven pass catcher. If he could stay healthy, that's it. Russell Wilson brings all these guys into fantasy relevance just by being a little bit better than how Kenny Pickett was last year and Mason Rudolph. So what does it mean for the wide receivers? For the running backs? Well, Najee Harris entering a contract year. I like both Najee and Jalen Warren at their ADPs headed into 2024. He enters Najee poised to exceed expectation and outperform his current ADP of 23. Despite facing challenges in 2023, he was sharing that workload with Jalen Warren. That's not going to change. But Harris managed his 3 consecutive 1,000-yard rushing seasons and contributed significantly in the red zone. While his passing involvement decreased, the Steelers committed to a run down the stretch, and I think that's going to be even revamped and amped up with new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. So Jalen Warren, versatile option as well. He adds depth. I'm projecting him around the 800 rushing yards with a good amount of passing as well. 5 touchdowns. I think he makes a strong case as a fantasy sleeper pick, and I think he's going to surpass maybe Najee in 2024 potentially with his ADP. They're very much going very similarly, and the way that Jalen Warren looked and what he can do after the catch, the explosive metrics and efficiency, showcased his top-tier efficiency metrics. He ranked among the league's leaders in explosive run rate, missed tackles forced per attempt, and yards after contact per attempt. These stats highlight his knack for big plays and maximizing yardage, translating into consistent fantasy points in both rushing and receiving. So that's why he's got a good competitive edge over Najee Harris. I like his upside potential. I also like the upside potential of one George Pickens. His current situation, he is stepping into the spotlight as the bona fide number one top wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers following the departure of Deontay Johnson. Fantasy value rises with a chance to become that primary target. He makes the big plays. We know that. He improved his consistency, and now he's going to be a sought-after asset in fantasy leagues, especially after he breaks out huge here in 2024. Mark my words, folks. I'm huge on George Pickens in 2024. He heads the 2024 season as the rising star. I love it. Fantasy managers should view him as a cornerstone to their team. I anticipate continued growth and impact headed into this season. Now, Pat Freiermuth, another number two pass catcher, I'm thinking in that offense. I think he's going to come back for a bounce back season. I think the touchdown regression is going to come in a positive way. I think the targets are going to be there. And then there's an interesting situation between Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, who will get that number two role outside of George Pickens. Calvin Austin is, from what I'm hearing, is getting the look right now based off of his experience and his tenure with the Pittsburgh Steelers and his role on special teams. But that could also change. Roman Wilson was I was really high on him headed into the season until I heard a lot of this Calvin Austin, Steve. So I'm being very cautious, but I'm very, very optimistic about Roman Wilson if he can crack the lineup. So just be very, very cautious about that headed into the season, and keep tabs on that wide receiver room, because ton of vacated targets. We don't know who they're going to go to yet. And we know that George Pickens is going to be a benefactor of that. We know that Pat Freiermuth is, but there's going to be quite a few around that are going to need to be gobbled up. And one of those guys should emerge as the leader. Now let's get into some headlines, and then we'll sign you off for the night. Headlines is Leonard Fournette. He claims that he is in his best shape of his career and he's headed for a continued spot on an NFL rosters. I would not be overreacting to this news and drop a player currently on your NFL roster who only scored 4 fantasy points all season last year. Fournette is a man to monitor, just like Dalvin Cook. He's a guy that you could probably spend a couple of bucks on if you're really, warranted. But that's just, the steam that's happening at this time of year, where you get all these guys getting steamed up as, I'm in the best shape of my life because it's the preseason and we need stuff to talk about. So that was one. Now, Bo Nix's arrival has sparked controversy as the Denver Broncos assess their quarterback options for this upcoming season. Nix joins a competitive lineup of season backups, Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson. While Stidham has impressed in offseason, Nix's extensive college career positions him as a strong contender for a starting role and potentially as early as week 1. Fantasy managers are closely monitoring Nix's progress, intrigued by his potential to lead the Denver Broncos offense with notable college pedigree and the chance to thrive in a team eager for quarterback stability. I'm looking for Nix to present that gamble reward scenario for fantasy drafts as the Broncos gear up for the season. The competition among Nix, Stidham, and Wilson will shape fantasy gamers' quarterback strategies. Nix, a key player to watch in this offseason. The discussions now are revolving around a guy here who's got a little bit of hopefulness in making a Kansas City Chiefs lineup as a walk-on rugby star, former rugby star. And I'm talking about Louis Rees-Zammit, who has stirred up some buzz in the fantasy community as reports suggest he's on track to make the Chiefs' active roster. Fantasy managers are eyeing him as a potential breakout, known for his speed and versatility. Rees-Zammit could shake things up in Kansas City. As the new NFL season approaches, all eyes will be on Louis Rees-Zammit, how he fits in the Chiefs' plans, especially with the ability to adapt on the team's strategies and how they will use him in different roles, especially on special teams. So he'll carve out a role there. That's how he's going to make the team. But bearing an injury to that running back room. He could definitely carve out a role there if something were to happen there. So somebody to keep an eye on, not somebody to draft yet, but keep your eye on him. And then another 5th round pick, and that's Rasheen Ali, that looks to take advantage of Keaton Mitchell's absence during training camp. I like what's going on here. I've been steaming up Ali for a while. He had a productive career at Marshall, tallying over 3,000 yards from scrimmage, 42 touchdowns in just 32 games. Now he's recovered from his most recent injury. Ali's attention shifts to making himself a roster spot in training camp. He's an interesting stash in Dynasty and worth monitoring redrafts, especially if Derrick Henry were to miss any time. So, and with that, we've concluded a week's worth of news. We covered the AFC North, and thanks for tuning in today on Player Profiler Day. I'm your host, Mike Lindberg, bringing you the freshest updates every Wednesday. Stick around as we continue to deep dive the world of Player Profile. For exclusive content and even more updates, follow me on X at FFCanuck99. If you like the content that you're seeing here on Player Profiler today and on the news desk, please give us a like on our YouTube channel, our NFL News Player Profiler news channel on the YouTube and on X. We appreciate the subscriptions. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Remember, Bradley Stalder's back on the mic tomorrow for the Thursday slot. Our YouTube is growing, so continue to subscribe. And from the entire team here at Player Profiler, have an absolutely epic evening. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.